Football Manager 2024 is out right now, and there is a new feature in the game that kind of got dropped under the hood, but you are going to see right away when you start a new save game. And that setting is something that when you go to set up your game, you're going to be asked about. Choose a game mode? Yeah, there's 3 new game modes in Football Manager. We should probably talk about them. Yes, folks, how is it going? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are doing amazing. Today, we are talking all about the new feature in FM, the new game modes. If you haven't yet picked up the game, I've partnered up with Fanatical, a Sega-approved retailer. It's 22% cheaper than on Steam. You get beta access instantly. There's a link at the top of the description and down in the comments. If you've not picked up the game yet, you probably should pick it up. This new stuff's good. So when you launch Football Manager, you now have a choice of 3 career mode options. The first is original. That is what you are used to with Football Manager. Real World is a little bit different. When you start a save game, transfers that happened after the start date happen at the dates they actually happened at in real life. So, for example, Harry Kane will move to Bayern Munich during the summer after the start date. Cole Palmer, who of course moved from Man City to Chelsea, will actually move at the end of the transfer window. He will start at Man City and then make the move over. And then finally, we have the new mode that I'm most excited about, Your World. Club squads and budgets will be accurate at the start of the 2023-24 season, with no real-life transfers reflected after that date. Now, naturally, if you've ever played Football Manager before, at this point, you know what original is, so we're not going to focus on that one too much today, but I do want to just show off the 2 new modes, especially Your World. I think, though, to kick things off, we'll get into a real-world career. Now, it is worth noting that when you get to the game setup screen, you can also choose the game mode and start date in the top right. If you choose a start date after a transfer happened, using the real-world option where transfers happen on the specific dates, those transfers will just happen. So I've just set up a real-world save game at Chelsea. I feel like Chelsea are the perfect example for the new save games because of how much transfer business they did. If we head over to the transfer screen here, we have a list of all the transfers in and out that Chelsea did. Most teams, obviously, they're not going to look like these, but all these transfers have the real world values that these transfers cost, active and happening. Now, sadly, if there was any players that you weren't happy that your club you're managing sold in the summer and you start with the real world option, you can't cancel the deal. So if I wanted to cancel the signing of Diassi, I can't. He will just be joining me on the 4th of August. And of course, this applies for transfers both in, like the ones we've already mentioned, Casado and Lavia will be joining us in August respectively. And on the outs, we also have players that will be leaving the club, such as Andre Santos, who of course in real life is headed on loan to Nottingham Forest. I think Real World is going to be really interesting, especially after the January transfer update. If you guys have ever played the January transfer update, obviously transfers that happen in January in the past in Football Manager have always already been at their new team at the start of a save game, which always felt a bit weird when they joined in January. This mode here will completely solve that, and on top of it, it does also account for your transfer budget changes as a result of the transfers happening. So if you start a Chelsea real-world save game, you're not going to have that much money to spend. But of course, you do still have the ability between July and the start of the season using the real world option to move players on. So if there's anyone who's massively overpaid, I'm trying to give an example, Raheem Sterling, I mean, 350, it's quite steep. You could still look to sell him on. Of course, if there's players who joined recently, someone like Enzo Fernandez, who of course only joined in January, he's probably going to be difficult to move on still. So real world is cool. I like the idea that transfers happen on the actual dates they happen. I feel like it's maybe going to be a bit frustrating if you get already attached to a star player and then you're losing them after like 4 games of the season. And like I already mentioned, if we find someone like Cole Palmer, he has his transfer arranged for Chelsea that will go through on deadline day on the 1st of September. That does mean that if Man City wanted to, they could use him for the first month of the season while he's still at the club. So that is Your World. I want to talk about the other mode though. This mode I genuinely think could be game changing. It's definitely not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but for me personally, I had quite a lot of fun messing around with it whilst I had alpha access. And of course, that new mode is Your World. Now for this, things get a little bit interesting because if we go to advanced setup and we choose England as our start date, you'll see here the England start date is the 3rd of July. So as a result of that, you may have noticed players like Havertz had already left Chelsea in our previous example because we were using the real world option starting on the 3rd of July. But, and God bless Bulgaria, that's not a sentence I ever thought I'd say, but if we choose Bulgaria as a starting nation, and you'll notice here there's text saying, if you pick a team to manage later, you'll only be able to pick a team managing in the country you've chosen. Note that, we're going to work around that, because Bulgaria is different. Bulgaria, if we just have a peek at them, have start dates in June. So, if we choose early Bulgaria as our start date, and of course, we can only pick teams in Bulgaria, we now have a June start date. That means that players that left Chelsea after the 12th of June, in real life, will now start at Chelsea. So if you didn't like Havertz or Mount leaving as a Chelsea fan, you can keep them around. So it is worth noting that with the Year World option as well, you could choose to start later and closer to the start of the season. If you want all the transfers that happen, say, up until the start of August, by picking a start date in England at the start of the season, you could have all the real world transfers, but then have none of the late transfers in the window happen. But for this example, we're managing Chelsea again. Of course, you'll notice right now, I can only pick teams in Bulgaria because I guess Sports Interactive don't want you managing teams in England in June. But if we start unemployed, and this could get removed, I will say now, but if we now start as an unemployed manager and then do what I do best and hit the retire button, we now don't have a manager in our save game. But if we hit the add new manager option, suddenly I can pick any team I want with the exact same start date. So we're going to go manage Chelsea. And if we choose Chelsea now and hit confirm here, none of Chelsea's summer transfer window has happened. The entire universe is as it was in June in real life. All the transfers that went on Lukaku and co no longer leaving the club. And if we now go and look at this club profile screen, you'll see there's no future transfers listed. There's a load of players here who Chelsea don't have in real life. And in fact, Chelsea's team is absolutely mad, isn't it? But for example, crucially, someone like Kai Havertz, who moved to Arsenal before that 3rd of July start date, because we did the Bulgaria method, I'm going to call it that, he now starts at Chelsea. So this is an option for you if you really, really want to replay the entire summer transfer window. The only downside I will mention is that if you had any players in real life whose contracts were expiring at the end of June, they're actually given time on to the end of their contract. So a good example would be someone like Azpilicueta, who left Chelsea on a free at the end of June. He has now got a brand new 2-year deal. And equally, someone like Kante also now has a new contract for 2 more years. That is the trade-off you have. You can start in July and have a partially done transfer window, or if you start in June using the Bulgaria way around, you can have the full squads but with a few contracts extended. And perhaps the most exciting bit of all of this is the game reverse calculates all the transfer business that Chelsea did after the start date, in this case June, and gives you the corresponding transfer budget. So for Chelsea, first window, not only do we have the starting squad that Chelsea had at the start of the summer, we also have £175 million in the bank, a wage budget of £5 million, and a load of assets we could look to sell on. So if you're particularly bitter about your own team's summer transfer window in real life, this Your World game mode gives you the option to completely replay that out. And of course, unlike real world, there are none of the future transfers scheduled to happen. If there is one downside with Your World, it's the fact that the transfers that happen in the save game as you simulate forward, as I'm doing here to show what happens, they're not going to be too representative of what happened in real life. So while certain players may well end up coincidentally at the same club, using this game mode, I have seen Harry Kane go from Tottenham Hotspur with Son to go play in Saudi Arabia. Which, I mean, could that have happened in another timeline? Probably not, but it's a fun what if. Of course, it goes without saying that each of these game modes are going to have their own fans. There's going to be some people who just want the traditional Football Manager experience. There are going to be the people who want to have the real world transfers happen on the real dates. I feel like that's a good option now. It will be a great option in January. If you start a save game that starts in June, but obviously after the Christmas winter update of all the transfers, all those transfers are going to happen in your save game 6 months in, which, if one of your gripes has been the mid-season transfers being weird in Football Manager with the old way they used to do things, I agree. That is now resolved. I've just noticed, I've just got the game simulating it. Kante's got an offer from Al Ittihad. Thiago Silva could be on his way to Saudi Arabia. Yeah, I will warn you, the Your World mode, the Saudis go mad. Calvin Phillips wanted on loan from Real Madrid. There's some weird transfers popping up here. Messi completes move to Al Ittihad. I'm sorry, Inter Miami fans. I'm sorry. So I have just holidayed the start of the football season, and if we now take a look at the transfers in the Premier League that have happened in this universe, Here's what's happened. Now, for some people, they will like the excitement of this alternative universe. I think for other people, it will put people off. I think for me personally, for short-term saves where I just want to have some fun and really get experimental, the Your World option could be really cool. We can see here, Ward-Prowse ended up going to Liverpool, João Pedro ended up going to Brentford, Tapsoba went to Arsenal, Estupiñán went to Al Ittihad for £40 million. And the big transfer of the window, Dembele moved not to PSG from Barcelona, but to Man City. And of course, like we already spotted, Messi in this universe didn't leave PSG. He's gone to play in Saudi Arabia, which, I mean, it nearly happened in real life. It's not that far off, really. The biggest transfer of the transfer window, though, Harry Kane to Al Hilal. £101 million. Harry Kane, he likes Sander here. He's a big fan of sandwiches. And money, probably money as well. I have no doubt that the original way to play Football Manager will be the most popular, at least to begin with. I think Real World, later on in the year, may overtake it as the popular one. Your World, I feel like, is going to be one people delve into for a bit of silliness, but it does come at the whim of the Football Manager transfer AI trying to replicate Real World football, which, at least in the current beta version that I'm playing, Saudi Arabia like to spend money just on everyone. Of course, when it comes to the Your World option, you don't have to start in June. You could start further through the transfer window and play out everything yourself if you want some of the real world transfers, but not all of them. Ultimately, more options is better for us as FM players. And I think each of these have their place. Let me know what you think of the new game modes in Football Manager 2024 down in the comments. Who is your beta save going to be? Are you sticking with original? Are you going to go weird and wonderful with Your World? I want to know. Whilst you're down there, drop a like. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Loads of FM24 content dropping on the regular. And of course, if you haven't pre-ordered the game yet, you should totes my goats do that. Link at the top of the description and in the comments. Thank you for watching this video. Back with more Football Manager content. It's going to be coming thick and fast. Keep your eyes peeled. I'll see you again very soon. I'm out.